Margaret Thatcher's funeral replayed silently on the television like a foreign colour film. Clusters of people gathered at the corners and gutters of streets, waving their homemade flags, some weeping, as a slim black coffin paraded its route through central London. The live news footage ran across 2 screens simultaneously in the sitting room of Eileen and Arthur McGee's home. In any other culture, the celebration of one's funeral might have been thought of as morbid, or a bad omen for the more superstitious. In the Irish quarter of Inala, it was akin to the resurrection of Jesus. Having it replayed on television in vivid technicolor for invited guests was the most satisfying show of disrespect they could have imagined. The dining room table was laden with odes to the fallen Iron Lady. A platter of crackers and dip, dishes of potato bake, and slices of buttered bread slathered with HP sauce. Underneath the condiments was a white net tablecloth pinned down by crystal-clad wine glasses. On the walls, amongst the framed school photographs of grandchildren and black and white wedding portraits, hung chains of green and white crepe paper streamers. The annual festivities budget hadn't been blown like that since the Willawong Gaelic Club flooded on St. Patrick's Day in 2007. The guest list included our family of 9, 17 of the extended Inala Irish community, and 1 non-English speaking Vietnamese family who lived next door. "Thatcher, Maggie Thatcher, you know her, don't you?" my grandmother said slowly and deliberately to the Vietnamese mother tentatively holding a paper plate of potato bake. "The witch is dead," my grandfather announced with renewed vigour as he circled the room with a bottle of red. This caused the small Vietnamese woman to jump and then attempt to shield her 3 young children behind her back with her free arm. The significance of Margaret Thatcher relinquishing her uncanny gift for survival could not simply be marvelled at and put aside. It was an occasion that justified my parents and I driving an hour and a half from the Gold Coast to witness. I, as one of 4 grandchildren, wore my distaste for Maggie with a natural pride, as if the resentment of the last 2 generations was my own to bear. The beloved leading lady of Britain was our equivalent of let them eat cake. "Wake up, the wicked witch is dead, she's gone where the goblins go, below, below, below," my grandfather sung happily. "Jessie, hand me the crisps, would you?" The unwarranted transformation of someone's name is a custom that the Irish and the Australians have in common. "Yes, Granda. Ding dong, the merry O, sing it high, sing it low, let them know the wicked witch is dead." If West Belfast in the early 1970s were the frying pan, Inala in South Brisbane was the fire. The suburb that held the title for most home invasions in southeast Queensland was where many, if not all, displaced Irish refugees ended up. There were no IRA militants, no public frisk checks and no gunfire, no paratroopers crouching in your backyard. It may have been this comparative safety that meant the Irish refugees would always remain refugees. An unkempt white Australian teenager invading your home in the middle of the night looking for $10 and a fight wasn't a real threat, as my grandfather used to say. Brisbane suburbia was very much the opposite of threatening. So they chose to stay in the sticky heat and settle in a long, dry and undeveloped landscape. They grew accustomed to the empty RSLs, inhabited only with other 10-pound poms. They stayed even with that feeling of disaffection, the sense of estrangement that I felt within myself when people looked at my own pale skin and picked out my tangled accent. I was neither from here nor there. In the middle of the folly, my father switched one of the television sets over to the football. 25 years ago, when he had asked my mother to marry him, my grandfather told him that if you burn your ass, you have to sit on the blister. A party for the death of a former British Prime Minister was about as real as that metaphor got. A typical middle-class upbringing in Tarragindi had certainly not been sufficient preparation for the indoctrination of Irish refugees. The football was a point of focus, an organised game with a team of people following a clear set of rules. He called anywhere he could find order in that house his bubble. "Do you want a drink, Neely?" my grandfather shouted at my father over the makeshift bar that had been set up between the small kitchen and the living room. "No thank you, Artie, mate." "A beer or a cider?" "No thanks, mate, I'm driving home." "A wine?" "I'm alright, Artie. You can have one if you're driving, can't you?" Dad had already turned back to the football, a conversation he could understand. Unfazed, my grandfather picked up a glass of red that almost certainly wasn't the one he started with, and made a beeline for the young Vietnamese family. Irish hospitality demanded that everyone felt welcome, no matter how uncomfortable they became. By now, Thatcher was being pulled into St. Paul's Cathedral on a gun carriage, her Union Jack-draped coffin cutting a clean line through the crowd of black London mourners. As David Cameron stood to read his passage from the Bible, as per Maggie's final wishes, the Irish chorus struck up again, this time with several voices working in a cheerful harmony. "Ding dong, the witch is dead, witch old witch, the wicked witch, ding dong, the wicked witch is dead." Relishing the brief distraction, the small Vietnamese family made a break for the front door and made it safely outside with 2 takeaway containers of potato bake in hand. My father remained reclined on the carpeted lounge room floor, hands laced behind his head, staring intently into the television, probably willing himself to be pulled into the 50,000 strong crowd at the MCG. In the kitchen, my mother reached the bottom of a bottle and began scouting for a fresh one. The Irish refugees had gathered in small groups or pairs, some standing in thick plumes of cigarette smoke on the narrow backyard veranda. Back inside, my grandfather climbed atop of a dining room chair, actively avoiding my grandmother's disapproving glare as he trod on her vintage seat covers she had unearthed in the thrift store in Paddington. He stood slightly stooped, the bones of his upper back curved steeply from age. For the occasion, he had worn a black double-vested button-up jacket over a white dress shirt. His long black trousers had been ironed into a smooth line and his shoes were shone and laced neatly. When he first arrived, he had been a very tall, slender man with dark hair and a Presley jawline. I'd seen photos of him with piercing blue eyes and a sly smile, holding his 3 girls close to him. It was very much the same image now with a slightly different outline as he raised his glass and announced to the captivated sitting room, "Slanche, health." As the room raised their glasses in a silent toast, the motor hearse drove the Iron Lady from the church to the crematorium. Thank you.